All right, guys, welcome to another video. Some huge changes are coming. This has just been released in the developers' feedback on the Rise of Kingdoms Discord. If you guys don't have access to that, I'll link it in the description. But three big changes or updates of changes that they hinted at before have been announced. One is actually for people migrating back to the early game. One is for Imperium Kingdoms, special tickets, like how Imperium Kingdoms can actually bring in migrants. And then probably the one that people are going to be the most excited about is they're actually changing the way we can get special inscriptions. So now people can get intrepid, and it's not just this mythical unicorn that you hope to pull with like a less than 1% chance. All right, so let's actually get into the three feedbacks they had. I'll read this out loud first. So the question is, I don't understand your plan for adjusting special immigration. Can you explain it in more detail? So if you don't know what special immigration is, when a kingdom is in Imperium, right, they essentially have hit the cap for power and they can't bring in players unless they use a special ticket. Right now, for special tickets, you can bring in one player a month, right? So 3 months, right? Like off season until you go into another KVK, you can only bring in 3 players. And a lot of these top Imperium kingdoms, they have players retiring, they have players migrating out, and they can't drop Imperium. And they can't drop Imperium. The special ticket really isn't enough to supplement their player base, and that's one of the reasons why a lot of these Imperiums are dying or are on the way out, right? So let's actually see what the developers say. So the answer, or we're sorry if our previous explanation in the community about special immigration was unclear. Our plan for adjusting special immigration is as follows. After the adjustment, special immigration will no longer take up the special immigration quota. So right now you get 1 a month. Instead, it will cost special immigration points. At the end of each KVK, special immigration points will be issued to kingdoms based on the following rules. So every kingdom will receive a fixed number of special immigration points. So even if the kingdom doesn't perform well, right, they'll still at least get a baseline number of points. Kingdoms will receive extra special immigration points based on the total number of unit deads of the top 300. Governors in the kingdom's Lost Kingdom death leaderboard rankings and total deaths only include T4 plus units, so you obviously just can't kill a bunch of T1 siege and get this. The application and approval rules for special immigration will remain unchanged. Successful special immigration will consume special immigration points based on the immigrating governor's power, right? So I like this a lot, right? So before, you just get 1 per month. Now, every kingdom will get a fixed number of points. So one of my first thoughts is, okay, well, if you don't use the points, do you get to kind of roll it over and save it for later? Or is it like, once the off season's over, you don't use the points, you lose it, right? So that's going to be something that's big. I tend to think it should roll over, but until they announce it, I'm not sure, right? And then the other big one is that the special immigration points is actually based on the immigrating governor's power. So now you have a lot of these like very, very fat Krakens that are, in my opinion, way too overpowered, because if they go high power and they kill it, fine, but they just kind of hate the high power. Now it's actually going to be a way more steep cost to bring them in. And I like that they're actually promoting for players to not just get really, really fat in power and just keep it there. Because if you watched some of my previous videos, I already talked about this. Very, very high power players that don't drop most of their power during KVK essentially are dead weights, because they're taking up spots where you could bring other players in for migration, but also during matchmaking, right? Their power is being counted against them. And if they're super high power, but they can only bring 7 marches onto the field, they're literally being counted against, say, another kingdom that's leaner, and for every 1 billion power, right, you could bring in 100 million power players that could bring 7 marches. Like, the field presence is just going to be a lot greater. So penalizing kingdoms for bringing in these really high power players, I think, is actually a step in the right direction. Overall, I like this a lot. This makes it where the Imperium kingdoms don't necessarily have to do all this crazy stuff to drop Imperium, provided that you can actually bring in enough immigrants. My feeling is if this allows kingdoms to bring in somewhere between like 5 to 10 players, it'll probably be good enough where kingdoms aren't so scared of hitting Imperium and then have to do all this stuff to drop Imperium, right? Like if you could bring in 5 to 10, provided you have a stable enough culture and foundation where the amount of players migrating out, retiring after a KVK isn't so big, that should be enough to keep like a one alliance kingdom that's in the Imperium afloat. All right, let's go to the second one. Second one, the question is, how are you planning on improving the experience for new kingdoms? All right, so the answer, new kingdoms has always been of great importance to us, and we've always strived to improve their experience. We recently conducted a survey for kingdoms that had just entered the season of conquest, and most governors' complaints focused on the following. It's actually funny because it kind of matches up with some of the stuff I talked about in the previous videos I made. Right, so governors immigrating into the kingdom are too strong, making things unfair for native governors, right? So if you're in KVK 2 and someone has already been in Season of Conquest, say for like a year, and they migrate back, they don't get to use the in-game commanders, but that extra time they had, their equipment is so far ahead. You know, by then, a lot of the gold key commanders, they just have like close to max or max just from gold keys, right? So these players migrating back are essentially beating up on natives, and they have a huge advantage. The second one is new kingdoms were being matched with older kingdoms in KVK, resulting in most governors in the new kingdom being unable to keep up. This is one where I talked about in KVK 5 and KVK 6, usually one of those two, that's where a lot of these like young promising kingdoms just completely fall apart and die. And one of the reason is in KVK 4, even though you're in SOC, right, there's crystal tech and everything, you're still fighting other kingdoms in your continent. Whereas in KVK 5, you could be matched up with anyone. Like, I think the first time I really saw this was 2891. 3 KVKs ago, they were in the 8 Imperium KVK, right? 2268 was in there. 1093, 1034. I mean, not 1093, 1960, 1034, right? It was 8 like well-known Imperiums. And 2891 was by far the youngest. And when they got in there, they essentially ended up getting wrecked. And then that kingdom just fell apart. And that was KVK 5 for them. Okay, so right now, I think it's in Lilith's best interest to have a way to help young kingdoms transition and survive, as opposed to like the collapse rate being so high in KVK 5 and 6. The third one, to improve the new kingdom experience, we are currently looking at both the immigration and story matchmaking systems. Our current plan is as follows. So 1, extra requirement for cross-season immigration. So here they'll actually have a requirement for season 2, season 3, and season 4, right? So if you're going into season 2, your account can be 120 days older than the target kingdom. That's great, because 4 months is significant, but it's not so significant like it was before, when you could have players that have been playing for 3 years migrating back, right? And then season 3, the amount of days could be 180 days older, and then season 4 they could be 240 days over. I like this change a lot. I like it a lot because I mean, if you heard me talk about this at all, like in my opinion, I don't think it's a good thing for players to be able to just go migrate back and bully native kingdoms, right? And a lot of players, that happened to them, and it's one of these things where like, oh, when I have like a endgame account, I'm going to do the same thing to other people, and the cycle continues. So this de-incentivizes it a lot, right? And by season 4, at least they've had endgame commanders since season 3. That gap isn't as big as like if they just got to season 3 and then you could have someone that's 240 days older. So I actually like this change a lot. Like if anything, if it was up to me, I would make it even more aggressive, you know, make it like 60, 90, and maybe like 120 days, but you know, beggars can't be choosers, I guess. All right, finally, we will also be adjusting the quotas for the types of immigration listed above. So that's good, right? So if you have a cross-season migrant, like migrating back, they're going to cap that. That's what it seems like. In terms of story matchmaking, and this is awesome, we will be adjusting matchmaking for kingdoms that have just finished season 4. So I talked about this in season 4, you're still finding kingdoms in your continent, right? So that's about like 30, I think 30 or so kingdoms, or 50, somewhere around there, that are right around where you are. So you have usually around the same ratio of native kingdoms. Some of the bigger ones will be able to pull in the bigger cross-season migrants. But by KVK 5, which is where these kingdoms fall apart, they don't get matched up with kingdoms in their range anymore. They're getting matched up with everyone, and like 2891 got matched up with 960 in KVK5, right? That just wasn't a fair matchup, and it shouldn't have happened. So in their next season of Conquest, their first time participating in a regular season of Conquest story, so they're talking about KVK5, these kingdoms will be matched as closely as possible with kingdoms of similar ages. So maybe now you're not with kingdoms in your continent, but you're still with, like, if you're a 3100 kingdom, maybe you're matched up with like 3000 kingdoms, right? Or 2900 kingdoms. So like those kingdoms that are a little older will have an advantage, but it won't be 2891 matching up against 960, right? So I like that a lot. This gives younger kingdoms another buffer to try to build towards the end game and not just risk falling apart. And then finally, they said, we hope these changes will allow new kingdoms and their governors as much time to grow and develop as possible, helping them smoothly transition to regular season of Conquest matchmaking. This is a great update. Finally, the third one, the most exciting one, I think, for people, the quote-unquote guarantee system for drawing armaments need work. Even when drawing an armament with a guaranteed special inscription, it's still possible that I'll get a special inscription I already own. It makes it very hard to acquire certain special inscription armaments. How do you plan on improving the system? So special inscription is stuff like Hunter, right? Like you could get an Autarch. If you get the 8 shards, most people are doing Wedge and buying Balance, even though some are going to Arch now. But special inscriptions are one of like the singles most powerful updates or upgrades you can make to a commander, right? So I could craft a legendary accessory, right? I could maybe expertise a commander, but when you get a special inscription, the literal like increase in that commander's output is so great, and it's so hard to get that like the haves and the have-nots is a huge gap right now, right? So right now you can only get the scroll Autarch from winning KVK, and then if you want to pull like a balance, right? So basically on the banner, you have to recycle enough legendary armaments to get 8 shards to buy it. It's really hard to get. Other than that, right, the emblem and the instrument, that you just have to get lucky and you pull it, and the chances are astronomically low. I think it's like off the top of my head, I want to say it's like about like 1 in 1,000 or 1 in 2,000, depending on whether you're doing like the scroll or the emblem. But regardless, it's like way under 1%, and it's just really hard to get, right? So now they're actually talking about updating the pittance system. So let's actually go over this and I'll give some thoughts on it. So the answer: we're sorry that the armament guarantee mechanic hasn't met our governors' expectations. Based on the feedback we received in the community, we plan on making adjustments to the guarantee special inscription system. The preliminary details of these adjustments are as follows. The guarantee system for rare inscriptions will remain unchanged. So right now, every 150 legendary armaments you acquire for a given formation, it's guaranteed that if you don't get it by 150, you're guaranteed to at least receive a rare inscription or better every 150, right? If you do get one before the 150 for that armament type, then that 150 count will reset and then it'll start counting over again. So for example, if I just keep pulling Arch, right, every 150 Arch legendary armament that I pull, at worst, I'll actually be guaranteed a rare inscription. Now, what they say is the guarantee system for special inscriptions will be optimized. When you received a guaranteed special inscription armament, rather than the armaments type being randomly determined. So right now, right, you get a special, it could be a Hunter, it could be a Balance, it could be Intrepid. Most people will be hoping for Intrepid because right now there's no reliable way to get it, right? You will actually be able to choose the armament type to receive. So I guess what it's going to say is, hey, you got a special, which armament slot would you like it to be in? This is actually really funny because the second video I ever made, and I got like, it's the least amount of views I ever gotten. I actually suggested to fix the armament system to actually allow people to be able to choose. They know there's an inscription on there, right? But they can actually choose which armament formation it was, right? So they kind of took that idea and now they're actually making it which slot it is, which I like a lot, right? This I think this change, just that one, allowing people to actually choose which slot, will take away a lot of the anguish that people have and complaints about an armament system, right? Once you've acquired a certain number of rare inscription armaments for a single formation, you will be able to select an armament type and receive a special inscription armament of that type for that formation. So it's kind of like a tier system now, right? Like 150, every 150 you're guaranteed a rare or better. But if you get X amount of rares and you haven't gotten a special yet, then by the time you get X amount of rares, you'll actually get a chance to select a special. So it's like basically a pity system on top of a pity system. Let's see. Once you've acquired a certain number of rare inscription armaments for a single formation, you'll be able to select an armament type and you receive a special inscription armament of that type for that formation. We will also display the number of rare inscription armaments you received in a row for a given formation. So kind of like the 150 pity system, right? Now you'll actually get to see the rare. And you'll get to see that in the armaments interface. The count will reset whenever you select a special inscription armament, just like the current pity system, right? That's expected. Lastly, we'll be looking at every governor's armament acquisition history. So now, if you've gotten so many rare inscriptions, you haven't gotten a special, which is me, we will send a compensation sometime after the optimization is launched. The specifics of this compensation are TBD, which is awesome. Like I love this because I'm one of the have-nots. I only have one special, right? And it's not from winning a KVK because I've just been losing KVKs. It's actually from the 8 shards and I got a balance, right? So I do have a lot of rare inscriptions. So hopefully I at least meet the minimum, right? And I could get like 2 specials. Now it'll actually balance this out a lot more. And it's not making it where you're either spending massive amounts of money where you kind of increase your chances to pull a special, or you're just constantly stacking and manipulating in a way to win KVKs. I think that they probably overtuned it initially where they made it too hard to get special inscriptions. And then like the only reliable way is to win KVKs, right? So then there are a lot of kingdoms and people that are actually willing to make the KVK not fun and enjoyable or stack it so they could get the autarch, right? Like I think the star is even as important for a lot of people than actually getting the special inscription. So kind of taking away that overtune scarcity to make it more balanced, I think will actually also inadvertently kind of, well, maybe they're purposely doing that, will kind of bleed into KVK matchmaking and then actually seeing better KVKs. So those are the 3 updates, 3 big updates. I'm really glad to see this. You guys have any comments, questions, please leave it. Again, thank you for watching. If you haven't yet, please like and subscribe. It will really help out the video, and I'll talk to you guys next time.